Okay.
And the new speakers.
Okay, wonderful. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for your patience. As you know, we have a new audio system and new speakers, which were installed recently. We hope this provides clear and crisp audio. Oh.
Test.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to try again. It's Thursday, July 25th. We are convening in council chambers, and we do have a new audio system, brand new speakers, and hopefully everything goes smoothly from this point forward. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. However, I do have a few quick notes before we proceed to our land acknowledgement. As many of us know, last week was our Kimpo Live Music Festival. Beautiful summer days and evenings. It was great to see our population grow as we welcome music lovers, not just from within our community, but from across the region and certainly across the border in some cases. The municipality was proud to be a title sponsor of the event this year. And of course, many members of council were able to attend and show our support and dance a little. So well done to all of the many volunteers who step up to make it happen alongside the dynamic Kempville Live organizing team. This coming Saturday is the to be continued 20th anniversary. Congratulations to another local business on a wonderful milestone. I remember to be continued was one of the first, I think if not the first, it was the first store that I at that time dropped in on Prescott Street a day after moving here before my son William was born. So I was looking for baby clothing and they had lots. So I know Shelley Mitchell has worked hard and navigated some moves and expansions and survived the pandemic. So we're really pleased to be able to celebrate with them this Saturday, July 27th from 10:30 a.m. onwards at 207 Saunders Street. Another exciting initiative is Communities in Bloom. Judges are visiting our fine community August 7th through 9th. As we know, Communities in Bloom is a not-for-profit organization that travels many different communities in Canada and evaluates all of them on their beautification efforts. It's a friendly competition, and we know that every year we just get stronger and raise the bar a little bit higher. So if you can, do your part for Communities in Bloom. And finally, we would like to recognize that this week is the end of an era with the closure of Class Axe Guitars. The wonderful owner, Bob Bashara, who was certainly a very important catalyst for Kempville Live Music Festival, is retiring. Class Axe has been a destination for guitar enthusiasts and music lovers for decades. In addition to guitar sales, hundreds of students have honed their school skills at the music school. Audio expertise and equipment have provided soundtracks to countless community events. And really, when you think about it, Bob fundamentally changed the cultural and musical landscape of Kemptville and North Grenville. So we are hoping that through our Arts and Culture Committee, among other committees and organizations, there will be many opportunities to celebrate Bob, to say thank you so much and wish him a happy retirement filled with lots of music and celebrations. So with that, we'll go to our land acknowledgement as we proceed with the meeting, and I'll invite a council colleague to read it. I should note there's just two council colleagues with me in chambers tonight, Councillor Debbie Wilson to my left and Councillor Doreen O'Sullivan to my right. We do have Deputy Mayor John Barkley joining virtually, and I know Councillor Strachan is on a very, very well-deserved holiday on the East Coast, and I don't think she's with us right now, or is she? Okay, so she may join us a little bit later, though we knew that she was juggling many, many things during this holiday. So we hope she's having a great time. So with that, maybe Councillor Wilson, would you like to read our land acknowledgement? Thank you.
The municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the territory of the Anishinaabe. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship, and we commit to Indigenous informed decision-making to foster the path towards reconciliation.
Thank you so much, Councillor Wilson. Next, we'll go to the approval of the agenda. And we'll look for a mover and a seconder for the council agenda for July 25th to be approved as presented. I do see Deputy Mayor there now, so welcome, Deputy Mayor. I know you've been here for a while, but we're just bringing all of the technology together, so welcome to you. And would you like to move the adoption of the agenda, please?
Sure, also move. Thank you.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Sullivan, thank you. Any questions or concerns in regards to the agenda? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, please raise your hands. Great, that's approved. Now, we don't have closed this evening, so we'll go straight to disclosures of interest. Colleagues, any declaration of perceived or real financial benefit or loss arising from tonight's meeting? Seeing none. Oh, I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor, you're okay?
Yeah, I'm just not, none doesn't come out as easy as it used to.
Indeed. No declaration. We got it. So next we'll move on. We have a number of items on the consent agenda. Items listed under consent or considered routine are no longer required further discussion. The exception to this rule is that a member may request that one or more items obviously can be pulled for discussion and voted on separately. The proposed consent agenda is before you, colleagues. It has 6 items. Enbridge Gas Inc., stop up and close portion of On Our Way, award tender for mini rescue apparatus, road name change bylaw, Maplewood Hall, steel roof replacement, and council compensation 2023. Is there any wish to modify the consent agenda as presented? Not seeing any. So then I'll look for a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the consent agenda as presented. Councillor Wilson, thank you very much. And I'll look to Councillor Sullivan, thank you. And I'll call the question. All in favor? Great. That carries. Thank you, colleagues. So with that, we are going to, I believe, reports under item K. And under item K, I believe we have addressed everything. So we'll move on to Public Works. So under Public Works, we have our semi-annual wastewater update. And Mr. Finley is here for that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the first report we have for council this evening is a semi-annual, excuse me, a semi-annual wastewater performance report. This is a a report that's provided to council twice a year to ensure compliance with under our drinking water quality management standard. And it also gives a chance for staff to communicate with council as they are the owners of the water and wastewater systems. Next. So again, as I mentioned, that's the recommendations that council receives this report for information purposes. And again, it covers our requirements under the drinking water quality management standard to communicate this information. And as well, we also provide the wastewater side just in conjunction with the water side. Next slide, please. So some highlights that we wanted to provide was that all drinking water samples were collected as required. We did have one water main break the first half of this year that was located on Sanders Street, and it was dealt with at that time. We, due to that water break, there was one AWQI or adverse water quality incident, which was a total coliform count on one of the water samples that were taken during this event. Subsequent to this and through the requirements of the Ministry of Environment as well as the health unit, we did resample, flush and resample, and with everything coming, the samples coming back clear, that adverse water quality incident was closed out and deemed finished. Next slide, please. From the wastewater side, a couple updates that we were going to provide. We did not have any tertiary bypass events or overflow events during this reporting period, which typically during our spring freshet and high water table, as well as the spring melt, we do typically have some higher loads on our wastewater treatment plant that can create some issues there. We were fortunate enough that we had the weather was in our favor and we didn't have any incidents there. And we did not exceed any of our testing parameters the first half of this year as well. A big item that we did want to mention to council is back in the spring, we did award the construction of the water pollution control plant expansion project to North America Construction. They have begun to mobilize. We have started to clear the site in preparation for construction. And so we are starting to move forward with that project, which is an exciting first step moving through there. Also in abilities to help finance the project, the municipality did apply to the Housing Enabling Water System Fund for approximately $25 million in funding. However, we have not heard back on that funding announcement yet, so we are still waiting to see if we were successful or not. Next slide, please. That is some of the highlights of the report, but I'm happy to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Finley. In terms of the expansion, of course, we've been over this before, but just for our own edification, how long is it expected to take the construction phase of the expansion to our wastewater treatment plant?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It is expected just over 2 years of construction.
And we're at the early stages, so I had the opportunity to go out quickly yesterday and see some of the lands that are being prepared. When do you expect full construction to take place?
So in terms of full construction, we are just mobilizing the site trailers. We would expect, they've done some preliminary, like I mentioned, some excavation of the topsoil. We will probably break further ground within the next couple of weeks here. Once we're just waiting for some erosion and sediment control fencing, some dewatering permits to be approved through the ministry, which are just follow-up, and then we'll be going quickly here.
Excellent, thank you. Other questions, council colleagues, in regards to this report? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry for my voice. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Director Finley. When do we expect to hear back about our funding request?
I can probably go ahead.
Sure. So through you, Madam Mayor, to Deputy Mayor, unfortunately, they didn't give us an announcement date unless the mayor knows more. We've reached out a couple of times. The ministry just told us it's under review. They haven't given us an announcement date, so we're unsure at this time.
I think I can add that due to the overwhelming number of applications and the dollar value of all of those applications across hundreds of different municipalities, the ministry has had to take a step back in order to just process the volume of applications, recognizing that this fund, which was hard fought by Minister Kinga is one that is so oversubscribed now. I think the administrative exercise of evaluating all of the applications is just become immense. So our understanding is there will be no news throughout the course of the summer, and that they're looking at early fall. They also recognize that by virtue of how many municipalities applied, they likely will need a phase 2. They are looking to stretch the dollar, is my understanding, with this fund. So one could speculate that smaller asks may do better than bigger asks, but we really don't know that. That's simply speculation. So lots of variables at play. It's certainly an important fund, and one that I know our staff worked very hard to submit. But I think at this time, no news is good news, but I think there's going to be a while before there is news. Deputy Mayor, anything else with you?
No, thank you.
So I just wanted to ask Mr. Finley, we currently, we have a optimally working plant due to various innovations, and I think a commitment to maximize the existing capacity. As we move forward with the expansion, do you see other opportunities to further optimize the current plant in order that it might have a little more capacity as, we not wait, but are active in ensuring we have that additional capacity in a couple of years?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through the expansion, or this first phase A of the expansion, because we phased the project, we won't gain the full capacity that the province will be providing to us. However, we did review a number of efficiencies and are hopeful that once the implementation of these efficiencies through construction, that we will be able to reduce the amount of average day flow that we are reporting to the ministry, and that'll help gain us some capacity at that plant at that time.
And just one last question, if I might. As we see new homes coming to North Grenville, whether they're in Equinell, in rural parts of our municipality, or through the Mattamy development that I don't think anyone can really miss right now, on 43, do we make those stipulations for preservation of stormwater, wastewater? Like how do we, or do we have the capacity to direct certain conservation measures that may in fact diminish the burden on our existing or expanded plant?
From the wastewater side, we do not, we currently do not have items that diminish the use from residential homes. However, our biggest deterrent that helps people regulate is that we do meter the water consumption and of course charge for that consumption. We did notice once metering had started that residents became more aware of how much water they use and in essence how much wastewater they produce, and they do that has helped, I would say, and they're trying to reduce their amount of wastewater produced because they know they're being billed for it.
Ms. Dunlop?
I'm Red. Do you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so the other is that under the sewer use bylaws, we do require separation of sanitary and storm. So that way it is, in essence, saving the capacity at the wastewater treatment plant. The older homes built in the 50s and the 60s, unfortunately, still have some combined systems internally within the dwelling units. So we do have bylaws that limit and protect the capacity at the plant.
So items such as like low flush toilets as an example, right? Which would go into our wastewater system. These are not stipulations within the municipality currently
No, we don't.
for new builds.
Correct.
Okay.
We don't, but it's a almost an industry standard now, I would say, to
Right.
put those items in, but it's not a requirement through
Okay.
us.
So you're seeing the trend in housing construction being one where that would be the sort of default measure for new homes.
That's correct, yes.
And does that change then the not just that one item, of course, but do those efficiencies change the sort of calculations that you make when it comes to the burden an individual home or commercial property might have on our system?
Yes, it does, Madam Mayor, especially when we're doing our engineering evaluations of single-family homes. It has the amount of consumption has decreased through those calculations over the years, as have many municipalities that have recognized that. So previous, we were looking at 425 liters per person per day per household, right, in a household.
Say that number again?
425 liters
Liters per
per
person.
person per day. That number has slowly decreased. Our last set of design standards, we were at 350 liters, and then we've since then reduced down to 300 liters per person. So it, as those efficiencies are recognized, and that's kind of a throughout multiple municipalities, everybody recognizes that people are reducing their flow, so we're reducing those calculations as we see them.
Does that include children when you do a household count? Are you counting dependents?
Yes.
So a 1-year-old would be counted as potentially consuming, I mean, I know they're not, but they're part of a household where the calculation would be 300 liters a day.
Yes, and part of that takes into effect potentially doing more wash water, things like that.
Gotcha, true, fair enough.
It's all coming through.
Right.
Yeah,
So high efficiency washers, right?
that all plays a part.
Low
yes.
flush toilets, many other things are at least taken into account.
Yes.
Okay, excellent, thank you. I only ask because obviously when we make these efforts to expand our plant, we know that obviously it comes at a great cost. And I know that municipality's been wonderful at doing everything on our end to optimize the efficiencies at the plant. But obviously if we can also optimize how people are more conservative in their consumption, that obviously goes a long way too. Right. All right, colleagues, are there any other questions on this? I'm not seeing any. So the motion for consideration today is that council receive the 2024 semi-annual wastewater performance report for information purposes and to fulfill commitments in the drinking water quality management standard operational plan for the Kemptville drinking water system. So with that, I'll look for a mover and a seconder. Councilor Wilson? Oh, okay, thank you. We'll take Deputy Mayor as a seconder, please. And I'll call the question. All in favor? Raise your hands. Good. All right. And now we're going to go to the landfill monitoring report. And I believe that's Mr. Finley as well.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The second report we have for council tonight is the 2023 annual landfill monitoring reports. Next slide, please. So for some background, the municipality does have 4 waste disposal sites that we no longer accept waste to. We have the Kemptville waste disposal site, South Gore, Oxford Mills, and Burts Rapids. Each site is governed by an environmental compliance approval, or an ECA, which determines how the site is maintained and how the requirements for their monitoring. The municipality currently has retained Aegis, formerly McIntosh Perry, to complete the annual monitoring programs within each site. And each year they prepare a report where some monitoring is evaluated, interpretations are done, and the reports are provided to the municipality as well as the ministry. So we are providing these for council's consideration. Next slide, please. So the first site that we have is the Kemptville waste disposal site. It's located just off County Road 44. As you can see in the picture here, just south of the Equinell subdivision and about a little over a kilometer north of County Road 43. There are a number of different monitoring items that are looked at through the report. Some highlights that we have is through site operations. There were no operational deficiencies noted or any complaints received by the consultant. In terms of surface water monitoring, there were some concentrations, higher concentrations showed with zinc and lead that were within their historical ranges. as well as some new exceedances that over a number of years, in terms of aluminum, boron, copper, iron, and cadmium that have slowly increased. In terms of groundwater monitoring, the report indicated that the chemistry was generally similar to that of previous years. And for the landfill gas monitoring, there were no exceedances, and the concentrations were consistent with previous year's data. Next slide, please. The South Gore site is located just east of the intersection between Kennedy Road and South Gore Drive, or County Road 22, shown here in the black circle on the map. Again, no, from site operations and landfill monitoring, gas monitoring, there were no deficiencies noted and no complaints, as well as the data for the gas monitoring was consistent with previous year's findings. Surface monitoring, they did identify some exceedances in the provincial water quality objectives for some items such as alkalinity, ammonia, boron, iron, and phosphorus at various monitoring sites, locations on the site. And for groundwater monitoring, they did see some increased concentrations of hardness and iron. They've been noticing an increase over the past 10 to 15 years. Next slide, please. So the Oxford Mills waste disposal site, which is also our current transfer site, waste transfer site, is located on the east side of the intersection between Lindsay Road and Crozier Road. Again, the dark circle located on this map that you see. From a site operations, there were no operational deficiencies noted and no complaints received from the consultant. Again, with the gas monitoring, there were no concentrations that were any exceedances and determined to be within their regular limits. From a surface water monitoring, again, there were some provincial water quality objective exceedances for some aluminum, boron, chromium, cobalt, and other metals like that, as well as some groundwater monitoring, again, alkalinity, barium, boron, and iron from that aspect. Next slide, please. And finally, the Birds Rapids waste disposal site, it is located on Monkman Road. Again, like we mentioned, they're pretty typical from the site operations and landfill gas monitoring. No operational deficiencies were noted or complaints received. The landfill gas monitoring was conducted through the monitoring wells, and all concentrations were below the detection limits. From a surface water monitoring, all the locations were dry, so they couldn't do any testing for the surface water. From groundwater monitoring, they did notice some increases, again, typical from alkalinity, some nitrate items. There were also some increases in hardness and iron. However, these were also identified in the background water monitoring, so it's almost a makeup of the water itself. Next slide, please. So as you mentioned, these reports are provided to the municipality and to the ministry for review. Much of the recommendations out of each report is to continue increased monitoring. They do identify an increase in certain wells to monitor, as well as abandoning certain wells on each site that were no longer being monitored, or as the conditions have changed, should be abandoned from the recommendations. The next steps is that these will be provided to the ministry. Staff will meet with the ministry, review the recommendations, and through both parties determine next steps in terms of how to proceed with the additional monitoring, the additional wells that have been recommended. And that is the end of my report, but I'm happy to answer any questions from council.
Great, thank you so much. Council colleagues, any questions? I just have one, Mr. Finley. When we speak of those exceedances or areas where you're seeing consistent increases in certain heavy metals, right? In the test areas or monitoring areas. And I note here aluminum, boron, mercury, copper, iron, cadmium, obviously, like given what's in these landfills, that wouldn't be a surprise that you would likely see these exceedances. Are there mitigation measures other than monitoring, or does the rise in these particular heavy metals, the detection of them such that really at this point, only monitoring is necessary at this time? And I'm certain the province would likely have data on how these exceedances are playing out in various communities across the province. So what is the best practice over time?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So typically what occurs is, as you mentioned, through a lot of these waste sites, waste disposal sites, is these exceedances are there. What we do monitor is contaminated attenuation zones. So this is it to see if these items are moving away from the site. So as long as they're contained and stay at the site or in those zones that we're aware of, typically it's a monitor. However, it is at discretion of the ministry. Typically, we continue to monitor. If we see them start to move and expand that zone, there may be other requirements to deal with it. However, these ones currently are sitting in their contaminated zones. So we do expect there'll be continued monitoring or additional monitoring to make sure things aren't moving. But that's our current practice at the moment. Yes.
Great. So when we look at the groundwater data conclusions, right, where particularly for the Kemptville Waste site, where it says groundwater flows appear to be varying a little bit, certainly in some cases going in the right direction, in some cases maybe not. Continued collection of water level elevation data is needed to identify groundwater flow trends in the overburden unit and deeper bedrock unit. Do we have a good handle on those trends in the overburden unit and deeper bedrock unit moving into the future, or do we have reasonably good data now?
So through that information is what we currently understand is of the trend of McIntosh Perry has done the last 5 or they're on their 7th year, sorry, of the monitoring program. So they've modeled that piece to try and understand what's taking place. So we know from history what's taking place, not necessarily moving forward. So that's part of the recommendations was additional overburden monitoring to be done just to make sure we continue to have a handle on it. Part of that site as well, which does provide some benefit, is that the locations around that area are on municipal service water. So we do have that level of protection from a drinking water standpoint. However, we will continue, as mentioned in the recommendations, to increase our monitoring and move our wells appropriately to make sure we can continue to follow it.
Okay. Thank you. It's good to see this. Obviously, some vigilance has been applied, and I know that is the case for many years now. So appreciate these reports because they give us a better understanding of the complexity of the surveillance program. It's not simple by any stretch. All right. Other questions, colleagues? Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Finley. I know a lot of these landfill sites have been closed for some time, and I appreciate that we continue to move our monitoring wells. Do you have any perspective? Will we be tasked with monitoring these wells forever? I mean, it's a bit of a financial burden going forward. I don't expect, whatever pollutants are being leached into the soil will ever totally disappear. But is there any perspective you can give us on the financial burden going forward of monitoring these wells?
Mr. Finley?
So through you, Madam Mayor, to Deputy Director Barclay, there will be annual monitoring requirement for, I would say, forever, yes. The exact wells will change depending on what the sample results are. Even through some of these reports, As they've seen parameters change, there's been recommendations to abandon certain locations, as well as install new locations. So the exact wells themselves will probably change throughout the sites, but we most likely, just to be environmentally conscious, I couldn't see the ministry ever diminishing that requirement to continue to monitor. I don't have in front of me the budget for each annual report, but I can follow up that with you or provide that information to you afterwards.
I guess my only follow-up question would be, with this change in monitoring wells, are we generally seeing an increase in the number of monitoring wells that we have to drill, or in some cases, are we seeing abandoning wells, not necessarily replacing them with new wells? So overall, the cost of monitoring these wells, is it just a case of an annual increase as more wells are drilled, or is there a case where we abandon more than we replace with new wells? So a decrease in cost.
So through you, Madam Mayor, excuse me, sorry. Each site is specific to its own. I do note in Kemptville's site, there are over 8 wells that they are looking to or have recommended to abandon. They've identified a couple of additional monitoring wells. So it looks like we'd be abandoning more in that area. However, through some other sites, there looks to be more increase in background well monitoring. So that's grabbing water samples from outside the contaminated zone just to understand what the water in the area that isn't contaminated looks like. It looks to be more of those wells increased in certain spots, South Core as well as Oxford Mills. So it's a variation, and again, it'll depend on the sampling that they see as they trend year to year, where these recommendations come from. But I would say overall, we're probably seeing a slight increase at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And maybe just one last question from me, and I apologize, Mr. Finley, if I've missed it. Semi-annual waste disposal site inspections should be implemented for all overburden, bedrock, and surface water sampling locations. And this is indeed what is now being activated or implemented. Is that a semi-annual inspection as part of the overall strategy? Is that right?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not for all sampling requirements. Some are semi-annual and some are only annual. So as part of the recommendations coming back that we will discuss with the ministry, because it's identified through our environmental compliance approvals of what the required sampling is, timelines are. So we'll take that back to the ministry, review that, and determine their next course of action of if we'll move to semi-annual for all sampling or not.
It was just referred to in the report as a recommendation?
Correct. It's a purely recommendation at the moment. That's all that we get from the consultant is the recommendations that then we discuss with the ministry and determine the work plans from that point forward.
I see. So you evaluate the merit of the recommendation based upon what's feasible, doable, where it applies, et cetera, et cetera.
Correct.
And we would expect to see an update in the next report, more or less.
I would hope so. We are looking to meet with the ministry in August.
Okay.
So we're hoping by that time we'll have a bit better understanding of our work plan or what's going to be recommended to move into the work plan.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Again, you're here this evening, so we might as well make it worth your while. So appreciate your indulgence on some of these questions. Thank you. Any other hands? If not, then we'll look for council to consider the following recommendation: that council receive the report titled 2023 Landfill Monitoring Reports, including the 2023 Environmental Monitoring Reports for the Kemptville, South Core, Oxford Mills, and Burris Rapids waste disposal sites for information purposes. I'll look for a mover and a seconder for that motion, please. Councillor O'Sullivan, Councillor Wilson, thank you very much. And I'll call the question. All in favor, please? Great. Right, under L, we have no correspondence, no other business. Is that right? Thank you, Ms. Preston. Notices of motions. Any notices of motion? Seeing none. All right, before we go to questions from the public and the media, there is one other announcement I've told that I can now make. Ms. Dunlop, and that is, since our chief is here, we understand that it is now official that our Director of EPS and Fire Chief, Chief John Oakham, has decided to retire after many decades of municipal service and being part of the North Granville family for the last 8 years. As we know, and we've worked very closely with the chief, John Oakham has been instrumental in adding the chief training officer position, the fire prevention and protection captain, to serve the fire division. He came at a time of certainly significant growth, and that growth has only accelerated, thereby accelerating his stress. And certainly the amount of responsibility he's undertaken, which he has done with significant diligence, and certainly has always had the best interests of the community and the municipality of North Granville at heart. So of course, thankfully, we have the chief until early October, I understand. So he's not gone quite yet. So chief, obviously it's with some sadness that we received this news, but we know that you've been in this business a long time. And at a certain point, it's good to take a rest and look back at your many accomplishments and contributions. And certainly North Granville is much stronger for your decision to spend a number of years with us. So since the news is now public, we just wanted to recognize that you've made that decision. Of course, there'll be lots of celebrations and opportunities to reflect in the coming weeks. But of course, thank you for your service. Now we'll, thank you. So now we'll move on to questions from the public and the media. I'm not seeing anything from our lovely members of the public. Thank you for being here. Is there anything you'd like to add to our council meeting this evening in terms of a question? Strictly, of course, our questions have to relate to items on the agenda. So if you have a question, we'd certainly welcome it. But I believe our members of the public are eager to see the adjournment of the meeting. So we'll get to that. So close of meeting, confirmation bylaw. I did say to Ms. Preston that I thought it would be less than an hour and a half. I believe I have prevailed. And I would thank my council colleagues for their participation and collaboration in that regard. So we'll look to the following. That bylaw 6424 to confirm proceedings of council at its regular meeting held on July 25th be adopted and passed. And I'll see if Deputy Mayor would like to move our confirmatory bylaw, and Councillor O'Sullivan will second. Thank you.
I'll so move.
This shows us there's a delay, Deputy Mayor. So I think getting out to Oxford Mills, there's about a 1.5 seconds delay, but we're glad to have you here. So I will call the question. All in favor? Excellent, thank you. And before motion to adjourn, we should wish Ms. Dunlop well. This is her last, not one of the last council meetings. Ms. Dunlop is getting knee surgery in mid-August. So this meeting was in part to accommodate a very heavy agenda in August, but we know Ms. Dunlop, we will see lots of her before she goes off on what will be another very successful knee surgery at our wonderful Kemptville District Hospital. No better place to get a knee surgery in Eastern Ontario. So you picked the right place, Ms. Dunlop. But now we'll move to adjournment, and that is that our meeting at 5:59 p.m. Adjourn. And be it resolved that this regular meeting of council adjourn at 5:59 p.m. Councillor Wilson, take us across the finish line. Councillor O'Sullivan, calling the question. All in favor? Thank you very much. Happy long weekend.